All right, so we're going to go ahead and move on to our topic today. Our topic today is marine invertebrates. So we're going to be talking all about invertebrates today. I've already briefly taught you a little bit about an invertebrate and our feet together. So before I get into it, let me go ahead and show you the worksheets that we have. So I gave you guys 3 different worksheets in the on the website blog. There's this one here. Okay, this is the Symmetry activity. This worksheet is just for today. So as I am teaching you guys, you will be able to fill this out. So you're going to be learning about 3 different categories of invertebrates today. You're going to learn about 4 different ones on Wednesday. So as you learn, you can go ahead and fill these out. The last one is this packet here. This packet is for today and Wednesday. So as you learn about each group of invertebrate, you can fill out some interesting facts that will help you remember. So when I teach you about annelids, that's a very weird word, you can write down things that'll help you remember what that is. And you'll have this for today and Wednesday. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So what is an invertebrate? So go ahead and answer the question on the bottom of your screen. What is an invertebrate? Does it have a backbone or does it not have a backbone? All right, very good. So guys, an invertebrate does not have a backbone. So they do not have backbones. So if you guys want to go ahead, feel your spine, feel your back, see if you guys have one. We all do. We are vertebrates, so we have a backbone. But we're going to be learning about things that do not have backbones. 97% of all animals are actually invertebrates. So we have a lot of invertebrates in this world. All right, so now that we know what an invertebrate is, I want to teach you a little bit about symmetry. So guys, when something is symmetrical, it means it's the same on both sides. So if I fold this paper in half, it is symmetrical. It will be the same shape on both sides. All right, so that's symmetry. With our marine invertebrates, we have 2 main kinds of symmetry. And that's where you guys, if you have this worksheet, you can go ahead and take this out and look at that one first. All right. So the first one I'm going to teach you guys about is bilateral symmetry. So everyone put your hands out like this. So this is what bilateral symmetry is. So put your hands out and then do this. This is bilateral symmetry. You can fold it once and it's the same. But I can't fold it really, I cannot fold it this way because it doesn't make sense, it doesn't match up. I can't fold it that way. I can only fold it one way like this and everything matches up. All right? So that's bilateral symmetry. So on this one here, the butterfly definitely has that bilateral symmetry. So there's 2 of each thing. All right? There's going to be 2 with bilateral symmetry, 2 with no symmetry, and 2 with radial symmetry. So the butterfly would have that bilateral symmetry. So for those that are doing this worksheet, go ahead and write that down. And I also want you to mark its symmetry as well. So I did that right here. It can be folded one way. All right, now the next one is called radial symmetry. So this one's kind of hard to do with our hands, but go ahead and do this, okay? So to our best ability, this is radial symmetry, all right? That means that you can draw a line on multiple points and it can be folded over and be the same, okay? So again, it's kind of hard with our hands to do radial symmetry, but this is the best we can do. Kind of link those fingers up like that, all right? Maybe imagine that your pinkies and your thumb shaking like that, and then imagine being able to fold your fingers around. Okay, so that is radial symmetry where it can be folded at multiple points. So take a look here and what could be folded at multiple points. All right, definitely the starfish. So I'll go ahead and draw that symmetry line for you guys. So the starfish here, the sea star, has radial symmetry because it can be folded multiple ways and be exactly the same. Now, some things don't have symmetry. So the sponge here doesn't have symmetry. So there's no symmetry. So you would write no symmetry. Okay? So I did the first 3 for you. Now you guys can do the bottom 3 after the and lesson as well. So let's go ahead and move on. So you guys know what the symmetry is. I'll be pointing it out as we move forward. But quickly, I do want to let you guys understand what I'm talking about when I say certain terms in science. So when we talk about living things, we kind of have a way that we classify things. So what it is we go kingdom. So kingdom, you could have the plant kingdom or the animal kingdom or the protist kingdom. So I've talked about all three of those already. So we have kingdom, then we have phylum, then we have class, order, family, genus, species. So your genus species is a specific type of organism that you are learning about. And that genus species, if you guys have ever seen a scientific name, it's what's written in italics. But we're going to be talking about different phylums. So that is the second kind of level here. Kingdom, phylum, class. So if you guys see here, it's kind of hard to see because I use the back of this paper. But kingdom and phylum. So we're just doing the next step. So kingdom obviously is very big. So we're in the animal kingdom. And now we're moving on to the phylum. Okay, so phylum is actually still a pretty big grouping of organisms. And again, we're going to be talking about annelids, arthropods, and cnidarians today. So that's this worksheet here. If you want to grab that out and mark them down as I teach you, you can also have this one and help make your little study guide as well. So guys, your phylum is your second step when we classify different organisms. There are quite a few. We're going to be talking about 7 marine invertebrate phylums between now and Wednesday. Pretty much what you can think of that lives in the ocean, that's an invertebrate we're going to talk about for the mo. Annelid is Latin for little ring. So with that knowledge, what do you think would be an annelid? So again, annelid is Latin for little ring. Do you think that would be crabs, jellyfish, sponges, or worms? What do you think? Right. So guys, annelids are worms. They're your segmented worms. So we have 2 types of worms that we're going to learn about. This are the segmented worms. You're going to learn about flatworms on Wednesday. So there are 22,000 known species of annelids. Again, it is Latin for little ring. So think of earthworms and leeches. I have a few examples that I'll show you pictures. They have a bilateral symmetry, so they can be kind of in half, but they are not radial. They do not have a radial symmetry. They have a bilateral symmetry. They are soft bodies. They have called parapodia for locomotion, so tiny little feet. And they have multiple segments with the same organs, so that's kind of weird. But they have multiple segments in their body, hence segmented worms. And each little segment has the same organs in each one. That way, if you cut off part of that worm, it can actually regenerate and regrow. Now, the covering on these annelids are made out of cuticles. So if you guys can look at your finger, that little piece of skin that's at the top of your nail that meets between your nail and your finger, that's the cuticle. And your annelids are covered with that cuticle-like. Yeah. Okay, so within the phylum annelids, we also have what we call polychaetes. So I'll go ahead and show you so things like this. So this is a scale worm. This is an example of an annelid. This bearded fireworm is an example of an annelid as well. They are segmented. So within that you have polychaetes, and that is Greek for much hair. So these annelids are very hairy. They have a lot of more bristles. So this is a polychaete. We have more than 10,000 of them. And there is one species of polychaete annelid worm that can survive 96 hours without oxygen. So that's pretty cool. Alrighty. So one specific example of a annelid is the Christmas tree worm. So this is it right here. These are some of my favorite little things. They look like Christmas trees, and they actually live on different species of corals. They'll actually burrow into the coral, and they'll pop out looking like that. Now, they use this hair-like structures here to help catch food and respirate, so, get oxygen. They usually reside on stony corals, so brain corals and star corals are very common. when they grow or dig into that piece of coral, they secrete a calcareous tube, so a calcium-made tube, and so they're a type of tube worm. These guys can live for 20 years. Alrighty, so again, guys, these are Christmas tree worms, and when they feel threatened, so it'll be a burst of water kind of goes by them, and they feel scared, they'll actually hide and shrink back into their little tube casing within the coral. So they're really cool little animals. Alrighty, guys, so now we're going to move on to arthropods. So here's my next question for you. What do you think an arthropod is? Is it a sea urchin, a sea star, a crab, or a sponge? So the phylum Arthropods, or Arthropoda, to be more specific, is going to be your crustaceans, your spiders, your barnacles, your lobsters, your crabs, your horseshoe crabs. So your crabs and your lobsters, your barnacles, your shrimp, spiders, those are all arthropods. It is Greek for foot joint, all right? So they all have jointed feet. So that helps me remember what an arthropod is. They have those little jointed feet. They have bilateral symmetry, so you can cut them in half and they're on both sides, but they do not have that radial symmetry. They account for over 80% of all known living species. So all known living species, arthropods make up 80% of that. So we have a lot of them on this planet. They have jointed legs, allows them to move very quickly wherever they are going. They have a segmented body, and they have a hard exoskeleton made out of chitin, which is similar to hair, and it protects them. So they have a harder outside to help protect them. So they have that exoskeleton, and they have compound eyes. So I'll show you a few examples really quickly. So we have shrimps like these right here, two kinds of shrimp. You see that they have the legs, the jointed legs, two pairs of eyes. All right, here's some more. Here's some types of crabs that we have. There we go. All right, again, you see the jointed legs. All right. So guys, again, your arthropods are going to be your crabs and your lobsters. So within that phylopods, we do have the crustaceans. So that's probably what you think of when you hear lobster or crab. You probably think of the word crustacean. So guys, crustaceans are part of the arthropods, but your crustaceans, it is Latin for having crust or shell. So the word crustacean is Latin for having a crust or a shell. There are 67,000 species of crustaceans. Their skeletons are out of their body, so that's what an exoskeleton means. It means that it's out of their body. They usually have many legs, and fossil records date them back all the way to 540 million years ago. So we've had crustaceans on this planet for a long time. And then they do what we call molting. And if some of you maybe have seen snakes and maybe you use snake skin in your yard, snakes do a very similar thing. So iguanas and most reptiles, they'll shed their skin in order to have a nice new skin. Your crustaceans also molt, so they'll shed skin and they'll leave what looks like a dead skeleton in its place. So they'll shed that skin, and then they'll have their brand new body. So they'll leave the exact outline of their body just out there. So again, if you've ever seen like a snake skin, it's very similar, except when crustaceans molt, it looks a lot more lifelike. Like you might actually think it's a dead crab or something like that, but it's not. So I'm going to tell you about a specific type of crustacean that is an arthropod. This is a horseshoe crab. So guys, this horseshoe crab was dead. I found it while I was paddleboarding one day, so it was not alive. But this is a horseshoe crab here. It doesn't have legs anymore. They're all gone. You can see how cool it looks like this. All right, so the horseshoe crab is what we call a living fossil. Here, let me try to get it so you guys can see this better. There we go. So guys, it is called a living fossil, and they've been on this planet for around 445 million years. Now there's something really cool about these horseshoe crabs, something that you didn't know about probably, but horseshoe crabs actually affect all of our lives, no matter where you live. And that's because scientists actually use the blood of horseshoe crabs for testing different treatments for things. Most of our medicine depends on horseshoe crab blood. So pretty much, guys, horseshoe crabs do not have hemoglobin. And hemoglobin is what we have in our blood that transports the oxygen through our body. So again, guys, we have what we call hemoglobin. It moves oxygen through our body. These guys do not have that. And they also have blue blood. So they have this bluer blood. And they have an amoebocyte that clots and hardens when it comes into contact with different toxins. So there is a substance in horseshoe crab blood that will actually clot and harden when it comes into contact with something that is toxic or tainted. So scientists will actually extract this blood and they will use it into a substance that can test needles, different medical equipment, different drugs and treatments to see if it's toxic. So they actually will test all of our medicine with horseshoe crab blood before they will let anyone use it in the real world. Because guys, if we use medicine that has toxin or is tainted, we could die. So they actually will test all of the medicines, all of the medical equipment with the blood of this animal right here to make sure it is safe for other people to use. Which is really, really cool. It's very interesting that this guy right here is insanely important to us in the medical field. However, about 30% of these guys die. We try to take blood and then release them back into the ocean. A lot of these guys end up dying. So we are experiencing a die-off of these horseshoe crab friends. So again, guys, also on that blog that I posted, one of the videos is a really cool video, and it tells you all about how we harvest these guys for their blood and what it does, and it goes much more into detail about it. So go ahead and check that video out at the end. All right, guys. So the next one we're going to learn about is the Cnidarian phylum. It would be a Cnidarian. It would be corals, sponges, worms, or octopus. Now, guys, I have already mentioned the term Cnidarian to you before. You guys learned it on the first week. So Cnidarians are corals, right? So your corals are Cnidarians. Your octopus are actually, you're learning about them on Wednesday. So your corals are Cnidarians. It's also going to be your jellyfish, your hydroids, and your sea anemones. So those four are going to be your Cnidarians. So again, it is Greek for nettle. They are exclusively aquatic, so there are no organisms in the Cnidarian phylum that live on land. The other phylums that we learned about, we do have land animals in those. But in your Cnidarian phylum, they only live in the ocean. They all have some type of tentacle. They could be bigger, like your jellies and your sea anemones. They could be very small, like your corals. So they all have tentacles. It contains over 11,000 species of animals. And their body has two layers. They have the ectoderm and the endoderm. It's different. It's kind of like their skin. And they also all have what we call nematocysts. So you all learned about nematocysts on my coral lesson, right? And the nematocysts are exclusive to the Cnidarian phylum. Your nematocysts actually help them sting. It's a small little harpoon-looking like thing inside of their tentacles. And when something gets very close to them, they'll actually shoot out that harpoon nematocyst, and they'll sting their prey, and then they can pull it back in and eat it with their tentacles. So all of your Cnidarians have your nematocyst stinging cells. Another thing about Cnidarians, and most of them have a mobile medusa stage and a sessile polyp stage. So guys, bear with me a little bit on this one. This is a little weird. So a polyp. Think of, it kind of looks like a palm tree, but most organisms have a stage where they are a polyp, so they are stationary. They cannot move. Polyps cannot move. They also usually have a stage in their life called the medusa stage. So the medusa stage actually looks like a jellyfish, and they can kind of move around, whether it's they're moving themselves around or they're drifting around in the currents. But every Cnidarian usually has a moving medusa stage and a very kind of stuck polyp stage. So your Cnidarians will actually change shape as they go through their life cycle. And I did do a cycle worksheet with you guys coral lesson, so you can go back and that to see the different shapes that they will have as they go through life. So let's talk, I already told you guys about corals, so I'm not going to get far into that. But again, guys, just know corals, they are an animal. They do build a limestone skeleton, so they do create that limestone skeleton here, but they are animals. So at one point, animal polyps, a bunch of them lived on top of these, and that's what made this brain coral. If you want to learn more about corals, go to our, I think our second lesson that we did. We have a big thing about corals, but just know that corals are animals, and they're very, very important, and there are a lot of things happening to them that we need to fix. Sea anemones are also examples of corals, or sea anemones are also examples of cnidarians. All right, so guys, let me see if I have a picture of a sea anemone quickly. All right, so sea anemone like this right here. These are both examples of sea anemones. If you've seen Finding Nemo or Finding Dory, you know that clownfish usually can be found hiding in these things. So sea anemones are also cnidarians, so they're all related. Now we have jellyfish. So let's talk quickly about jellyfish, because I know a lot of you wanted to learn about them. So this right here is what we call a moon jellyfish. They're usually the size of a dinner plate. One thing about jellyfish is that they can survive in low oxygen waters, so water that doesn't have a lot of oxygen. They can survive in warmer waters and dirty water. So a lot of things like our coral, for example, cannot live in really dirty water, cannot live in really warm water. But your jellies can. They can live in pretty much everything. They're found in all parts of the ocean as well. So these guys are everywhere. They're free-swimming animals, and they have an umbrella-like what we call bell. So the top here is called a bell, and then they have tentacles. And they've been on this planet for possibly 700 million years. The jelly-like matter is called mesogelia, and it is 95% water. So jellyfish are 95% water. Again, they can survive in very low oxygen, warm temperatures, dirty water. The largest jellyfish species that we have, so guys, I'm calling it a jellyfish. It is not a fish. You can call it jelly if you want, but jellyfish are not fish, just so you know, just put that out there. But the largest jellyfish is called the lion's mane jelly. It can reach to be about 120 feet long. So the lion's mane is a really, really big type of jellyfish. You guys can Google that at the end of this. Again, 120 feet long on average. Now, the most dangerous jellyfish in the world is called the box jelly, or some people call it the sea wasp. It is the most venomous animal in the world. So the most venomous animal in the world is the box jellyfish. It's much smaller. They have pretty long tentacles, but they have a very, very small bell. Some other things about jellyfish. So some of you guys sent in questions for us, so I'm going to go ahead and answer questions that I got about jellyfish really quickly. So I was asked, can you eat jellyfish? The answer is yes. They're actually eaten in a lot of Asian cultures, but only about 25 species of jellyfish are edible, and they actually can be nutritious. I was reading a blog in Australia encouraging people to eat more jellyfish because they say it's got a lot of omega-3s, it's got collagen in it. There is apparently some nutrition in eating jellyfish. But again, guys, jellies are 95% water-based, so there's not a lot of nutrition in them. But yes, you can eat certain species of jellyfish. You can't eat all of them. Parts are poisonous was another question. So they all contain toxins. They all contain those nematocyst stinging cells, but some are stronger than others. For example, down here we have the Cassiopeia, which is the upside-down jellyfish. So it sticks kind of on the ground in the ocean, and its tentacles, it kind of little things of lettuce almost. They'll sting, but it's really not that bad. It's just like a little itch, little irritation that you'll get over minutes. So you have jellyfish on that spectrum, and you have the box jellyfish. That's the most venomous in the world. And it's going to be their tentacles that are the issue here. Their tentacles contain all the toxins and the nematocysts. How many species of jellyfish exist? There are about 2,000 species. So there are 2,000 species of jellyfish. Remember, only about 25 of them are edible, 25 you can eat. How old can they get? So on average, your jellyfish will only live to be about 12 to 18 months. After that, they usually die. However, I did find this out when I was answering this question. Scientists did find a species of jellyfish that they have named the immortal jellyfish that apparently doesn't die. Because what it can do is it can return back to a polyp stage in its life. Remember the polyp, the one that doesn't move, and then restart its life. So again, going back to our Cnidarians, your Cnidarians have the polyp and the medusa stage. They go through both, and then that's kind of the end of their life. So corals start up as a medusa stage and end as a polyp. Your jellyfish will actually be able to kind of continue that circle. So once they've gone through the medusa stage, they'll go back to a polyp, and then they'll go back to a medusa, and they'll just keep going. So if you guys want to learn more about it, Google immortal jellyfish, and you can learn more about it. But apparently that jellyfish technically can live forever. But on average, they live about 12 to 18 months. All right, the final thing that I'm going to teach you guys about is the Portuguese man-o-war. So this looks like a jellyfish, but it is not a true jellyfish. Down here, we have these during this time right now. They do not feel good when you get stung by them. You can go to the hospital for their stings, or you might just get a really bad rash. It really depends on your own body there. But this is not a true jellyfish. It is a Cnidarian. It's called a Hydroid. So a Hydroid is also in the Cnidarian phylum. But again, guys, this is about as closely related to jellyfish as a coral is. So they're in that same phylum, but after that, they completely branch off. So there's not much relation. Another cool thing about these guys is it's a colonial organism. There's several different animals that make up this Portuguese man-o-war. So several different types of hydroids actually make up this entire thing. So this is not one animal. This is a group of animals that created this structure. It is not a jellyfish, okay? So again, a jellyfish is one single animal. This is several animals making up one structure. They can average about 30 feet long. Scientists have found some of them have tentacles of 165 feet long. So they can have really long tentacles. Another thing about them is this right here, we call it their sail. It's filled with gas or like air and floats on top of the water. If you're not familiar with this organism, they kind of look like Ziploc bags floating on top of the water or plastic bottles. So especially wash up on the beach. When people are doing beach cleanups, you have to watch out for these guys right here because they are not trash. They are a living thing, and they can sting you pretty badly. So that's one interesting thing about these guys is they do look like a floating plastic object on top of the water, but obviously underneath it's a very different story. Thank you guys so much for joining in, and we will see you guys at 10:30.